Haitian pumpkin soup, or soupe joumou, is a very special all-in-one meal. In this video, I'll show you how to make it completely from scratch, but then in the description box, I'll give you some tips on shortcuts you can take. Once you've got the basic recipe down, you'll find yourself making big batches of it and freezing some for later. Don't be put off by the pumpkin aspect of the recipe. While you can certainly get big Cinderella-type pumpkins, if you can find calabaza squash or pieces of it all cut up, you can use that too. And here in the States, butternut squash is a good substitute. I'll show you how to make it with both calabaza pieces and butternut squash puree that I make myself. The first thing you want to do is preheat your oven to 400 degrees. If you're using big pieces of pumpkin, chop it up into big chunks just like this. The seeds should already be removed, but if they're not, scoop them out. Now if you're using butternut squash, you're going to do the same thing. Cut it into manageable pieces and put it in a baking dish so it can roast. You don't need to add any oil or seasonings at this point. Just roast them in the oven until they're tender, about 45 minutes or so. Once you've cooked it, you can scoop it out of the shell and even freeze it for later. This keeps really well. Now for this stock, I generally use beef, which is traditional, but if you prefer chicken or vegetable stock, you can use that too. To make it from scratch, just take your beef pieces and brown them lightly in a Dutch oven. Cover them with water, I'd say about 8 to 10 cups, and let it simmer for a while with some basic spices. While you can definitely use something like chuck roast, beef is pretty expensive right now. So even an inexpensive lean cut like this eye round is perfectly fine. Here I'm seasoning it with some garlic powder, salt, and pepper, and I've got a little bit of vegetable oil in the pan. After the water goes in, you're going to amp up the flavors with a couple of big bouillon cubes. I used beef and some ground cloves. This is a traditional spice for this recipe, so don't skip it. You're also going to add 1 or 2 habanero peppers depending on how hot you want it. Don't break them up, that's very important. Now it's time to prep your vegetables. You'll have 2 different batches of vegetables for this soup. The root vegetables, which are harder, and then your soft, leafy vegetables. For your root vegetables, I like to use a mixture of turnip, carrot, and potato. If you don't like turnips or you can't find them, parsnips or rutabagas or even leaving them out is okay, but just try it at least once. They're very good. Everything should be washed, peeled, and then sliced or cubed. Try to make everything as uniform as possible so that they cook evenly. We're aiming for a total of 8 to 10 cups of soup, so I would go ahead and prep 1 to 1.5 cups of each root vegetable. Now for your soft leafy vegetables, I like to use a combination of white cabbage, leek, and parsley. For the white cabbage, I used about half of this small head. All you want to do here is chop it up fine so it matches the size of your root vegetables. I'm using just the green part of the leek. I think that this tastes a little more mild and it's a lot prettier in the soup than using the white part. Leeks can taste pretty oniony, so I like to chop them up pretty small. Once your pumpkin or squash pieces are completely cooked and cooled, it's really easy to scoop them out for pureeing. If you don't have a blender, you can mash them with a fork and try adding a little broth to make it go easier. Once you've got it all mashed or blended, go ahead and set it aside for later. Once you have everything all prepped, go ahead and add your root vegetables to the beef stock. Take out the peppers. If they're dissolved at this stage, your soup will be very spicy. Go ahead and set a timer for about 15 minutes. If you can't handle heat, take the peppers out when they're still floating around in the soup. It won't make it too spicy then. Remove the beef and cut it into bite-sized pieces, then return it to the pot. After the 15 minutes are up, go ahead and add your leafy vegetables and a half cup of tiny pasta to your soup. Stir it well and set the timer for another 10 minutes. At this point, you want to stir it every few minutes or so that the pasta doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan. When the 10 minutes is up, go ahead and add your pumpkin puree. It'll thicken the soup, so don't worry if it seems too watery at this point. This last part should only take about 5 minutes or so. It's enough for the flavors to all come together, and you want to just refine your seasonings a little bit. Go ahead and adjust your seasonings with salt, garlic powder, black pepper, and if you have it, Maggi seasonings. If you don't have Maggi, soy sauce will work, or a touch of liquid smoke. It's got a sort of earthy umami flavor that can't be beat. The soup should be thick and savory. You'll have a tiny bit of sweetness from the squash and a bit of spice from the pepper. It really has all the different flavors blended together. Finish it off with a handful of chopped parsley and serve it with a wedge of lime on the side, just to brighten things up. Traditionally, this is eaten with a ham and cheese sandwich with a little bit of butter on white bread. Yes, white bread. In Haiti, Soupe Joumou, or Soupe Jaune, is eaten on Sundays and again on New Year's Day. It's really very delicious, and once you've learned how to make it, you'll never forget. Anything you don't eat on the first day can be frozen into individual portions. That's why I like to make 8 to 10 cups at a time, and then I save the rest for later. Drop me a line in the comments if you've ever made this, if you're planning on making it, or just let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you.